Well, we'll do what we can. There was an issue about the exhibits, 110, 111, 112, something like that. That came up right as we were breaking, that we had, these were, at least in part, the recordings.
It's the redacted audio that we played for the jury, Your Honor.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I mean, we've referred to them as 110, 111, and 112. Is there,
So then the other ones, shall I mark A's?
let's do the other ones as A's. Those haven't been in front of the jury at all, and those would be the ones that do not have the redactions. I guess it would be the original without attorney on them.
Defense counsel have any comment that these are the actual 111, 110, and 112, I think it is?
It's fine, however it's got it.
Sure. Sorry, I missed that.
We published to the jury 110, 111, and 112, and all of those have the redactions based on what defense requested. But we had previously marked as the exhibit the full recording. So if we mark those as A's now, 110A, 111A, and 112A, these have not been in front of the jury.
Well, they're not going to be admitted.
Correct.
That's fine.
Just keeping track of the record.
That's fine.
Since they were given to Mrs. Winnie, so she marked them. Then they actually played something different from the marked exhibit.
We played,
And now they want to call that recording that was played 110, 111, 112. Not the original marked recordings.
That's
Or-
fine.
Okay. So we're going to remark the original ones Mrs. Winnie got as 110A, 110, 111A, and so on.
I will do that. So I'll-
okay, great, thank
I'm
you.
hoping in a brave new world, this is not how we're going to continue to do exhibits.
That's getting crazy, Your Honor. I think part of that is we all admitted a lot of, or submitted to the court all of our exhibits beforehand.
No,
Adjusted.
I get it. Well, when we have NICE, hopefully this will be more readily tracked. And that NICE, which is an acronym for some kind of Microsoft software program, which I don't think has anything to do with NICE. I don't know why they call it NICE anyway. One hopes that that brave new world will be more sensical and better organized. All right, are we ready for the jury then?
Judge, I have one other matter I just wanted to address.
Go ahead, Mr. Conrad.
You can either do it now or prior to Cedric Armstrong taking the stand, but I reviewed all of Mr. Armstrong's materials, at least the statements that he's made to the state. I don't know how far the state intends to take this with Mr. Armstrong, but there's a bunch of information that's, I think, would violate the court's priors, motions in limine, and is just not particularly relevant.
I'm not sure why you're calling him at all, to be honest with you. Why are we calling him?
Your Honor, Mr. Armstrong was with Mr. Ellis the night of the incident, and spent the day with them, spent up till 10:35 in the evening with them. This event occurs at 11:11.
And
And defense has put in question Mr. Ellis' state of mind and where he was at during the contact, and this is relevant to how he was that day. He appeared perfectly normal. He played the drums at the church. He didn't have any indication he was under the influence of toxins. He lives at a clean and sober home in which they operate, and they do UAs, and
is the state claiming that Mr. Ellis was sober at the time of his death?
no, Your Honor.
Then what is the purpose of this witness?
It goes to the state of mind of Mr. Ellis at the time of his death, and at the time of the interaction with the defendants.
Well, I felt one way when I was sitting back there, and now I'm here, I have a different state of mind. So what does an hour earlier have to do with
And
this?
that's certainly a basis for weight non-admissibility, Your Honor. I mean, they can
No,
argue.
hold on. It has to do with admissibility, not just weight. Why is it relevant? Was it tell me about his state of mind at the time this all occurred?
It goes to the credibility of what defense is claiming his state of mind is. I mean, they wanted to show that he just changed like that, and there's no evidence of that occurring.
Did the witness observe him use the methamphetamine?
No one observed Officer Timothy used the methamphetamine.
Well, we've had testimony in this case that the use of methamphetamine changes people's mood.
And changed it in different ways.
It it can make them aggressive.
And it can also make them calm and distracted and withdrawn.
Maybe so, but that's still different than what he was before he took them. Right? And you're,
He was
and,
calm before he took them, he was intentional before he took them, he was helping set up Wi-Fi extenders and
what I'm saying is that if his mood was changed one way or the other with respect to methamphetamine, because of methamphetamine use, this witness wouldn't know about it.
we don't know when he took the methamphetamine, Your Honor. There's going to be testimony from defense experts that say that methamphetamine could have been taken up to 4 hours before.
Yeah, there's also been testimony that could be up to 30 minutes before.
And this is within the 4 hours.
Well, if anything, it tends to show that he wasn't using up to an hour before, which even narrows, I suppose, the time.
He could have used it and could have used it 4 hours earlier and been acting completely normal.
Could have.
Could have, just like defense argues he could have been in a mass psychosis. The state should be permitted to attack that evidence and use it.
And that's why I asked you, is the state claiming that Mr. Ellis was not under the influence of methamphetamine at the time of his death?
The state is not claiming that. Your
So then what has this got to do with anything?
Honor. It goes to his behavior shortly before his death. And he could have been using methamphetamine up to 4 hours before his death, according to the experts. The experts have not said 30 minutes, Your Honor. There's one expert that defense now says that they put on 30 minutes. Defense own experts in their interview said repeatedly they couldn't narrow it down that much, and that it would be up to 4 hours. And that was from Dr. Levine, and I believe Dr. Rice is of the same opinion.
Well, I don't know that he put a time on it, but Dr. Mitchell testified that the toxicology report and the information from that suggests that Mr. Ellis had taken the methamphetamine relatively recently before his death.
And recently was developed with Dr. Levine and narrowed down to hours, Your Honor. It was, we said, a few hours, up to 4, when we asked him to.
You asked him to speculate.
Yes.
He's not going to offer that opinion. He says recent ingestion, just like Dr. Mitchell. You don't know. You know based on the metabolite that it's recent.
Well, the only thing I'm thinking is that this may tend to prove that he hadn't been using it up to an hour before his death. That may be of some relevance here. But playing the drums and everything, I don't know about all that. His whole course of what he was doing that day?
He plays the drums at about 9:30 that night.
And,
He's at the church playing the drums. He's in front of the church, and then they actually up till 9:30, and then they go home, have dinner together, work on the extenders, Wi-Fi extenders, and there's nothing to indicate that he's behaving abnormally or under the influence of any drugs at that time. It also, the courts ruled that offenses permitted to get into the September 2019 incident, and that incident, the evidence includes a 5-day binge. That's not what we have, and it's relevant to differentiate between the two.
5-day binge.
In the 2019 September,
He'd been binging.
or 5 days. And that's not what we have here.
The issue wasn't so much about a binge. The issue had to do with a period of abstinence followed by use. Well, I do think it may be relevant to show he was not using methamphetamine up until about an hour before his death. That's the only thing I can think it's relevant for. If he managed to get methamphetamine, of course, wasn't there also a text message or something to someone that was found on his phone that said somebody was waiting to get some
It's
methamphetamine?
like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Your Honor.
Right, so then, does that suggest then that he was using methamphetamine while in the presence of these folks and they didn't know about it?
Sure, defense can go wherever they want to go. I mean,
Well, yeah, but I don't want to just go anywhere. The only purpose of this seems to me is that if he wants to testify, I suppose, that he last saw him about an hour before his death, and that at that point in time, he saw no evidence of methamphetamine intoxication, that may have some relevance in this case, yes. Beyond that, I don't see it. What he was doing that day, none of that matters. So seems to me it's a very short witness.
sounds that way.
Okay. Are otherwise ready for the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Your Honor, before we have Mr. Armstrong come out, can I have just a few minutes looking in the hallway to know what we're be limiting?
Sure. That's how the jury says. I'm good, thanks. Oh, Ms. Nicolavo, the witness who is going to be here today, is whatever this emergency, is it going to keep them from the courtroom beyond today? I mean, tomorrow, the next day, a week from now?
I'm told he's gonna be here tomorrow morning.
Okay, great. That's all I wanted to know. Thanks. Welcome back, everybody. Please be seated. Okay, Ms. Bremner, when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Lieutenant.
Afternoon.
We left off talking about Officer Rankine and any contact he had with Manuel Ellis. I think he indicated that he never punched Mr. Ellis, is that right?
Correct.
And he never kicked him, is that correct?
Correct.
And he never tased him.
Correct.
He never applied any type of LVMR on him, right?
Correct.
And what is that?
Lateral vascular neck restraint.
Okay. And so Officer Rankine never performed that on Manuel Ellis, did he?
Correct. He did not.
And he never called for hobbles. In fact, he told you he was unsure of who put hobbles on Manuel Ellis. Is that right?
Correct.
And he never put a spit sock on Manuel Ellis. Is that correct?
Correct.
I think we already talked about the fact that he took Mr. Ellis's pulse,
Yes.
and he found his pulse rating, I think the word he used was weird.
Yes.
Can you recall that?
Yes.
What was the context of that comment that he told other officers he found his pulse rating weird?
That it was a normal pulse that he had reported.
And why was that weird,
Um,
according to Officer Rankine?
If the officer explained it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I believe they were in a struggle for some time with him. So,
So if the pulse was normal, that would be weird?
yes.
Thank you, according to Officer Rankine. And he did put Manuel Ellis twice in the recovery position, he told you.
Yes.
Your Honor, asked and answered.
Sustained. Next question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Based on your investigation, first of all, how did you characterize your investigation? What did you entitle the investigation as?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Your Honor's cross-examination on this investigation.
Well, Yeah, I don't know what the title matters, but I don't know that it hurts either. Go ahead.
Originally it was titled Death Investigation, and then I changed it to Aggravated Assault of a Public Official.
Aggravated assault of a public official?
Yes.
Why did you change it to that?
After the interviews with the officers and other...
Objection, Your Honor. Move to strike.
Disregard the answer.
When you went to the autopsy, is that standard for you in an investigation of an officer-involved death?
Yes.
Now, why is that?
As case lead, you like to have overall view of what's going on and be available for questions and also be present if there's more things to be done.
And did you see any mechanism or any type of injury on Mr. Ellis that would have been consistent with restraint on his back?
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of foundation for this witness.
He said he observed the autopsy. Overruled. You may answer.
You can go ahead, Lieutenant.
No.
No. And you were there throughout the entire autopsy, is that right?
Yes.
Sarah McDowell, did you have any contact with Sarah McDowell?
Directly, no.
Did you attempt to have contact with her?
Yes, some of our detectives attempted to locate her and Mr. Lowry.
Before I get into that, I want to ask you, it sounds like you canvassed and had others canvass the area for potential witnesses.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And why do you do that?
We like to canvass as much as we can at different dates and times for any independent witnesses or video or anything to help find out what happened.
And what were the results overall of that canvassing in your investigation?
Only a few people were interviewed that we can locate, and other than the Vivint video from that neighborhood, that's all we had at the time.
It's been described as a Vivint and a Vivint video, is that right?
Vivint, yes.
Did you get that from somebody in Iona, then known as White's house?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Detective Helmke did that follow-up, and I got an email with it, and then also he wrote a search warrant to Vivint.
To get that video?
Yes.
And was that from her dad? You don't remember that?
Yeah,
okay.
I'm not sure.
It's a minor detail. Was Shad Hayes, it's S-H-A-Y, was he depicted in that video?
Yes,
Okay, and was he an eyewitness?
yes,
And did you interview him?
I did.
And what did you learn from him?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sounds like a calls for hearsay, sustained.
So you interviewed him, he hasn't testified in this case as yet, but you interviewed him about what he saw, is that right?
I did.
Did you know that he attempted to direct traffic?
Yes,
And asked the officers, Collins and Burbank, if they needed help?
yes.
Can't get into everything else he said, but was it a thorough interview that was conducted with Mr.
Objection,
Hayes?
Your Honor.
I just asked if it was a thorough interview.
I don't know, would you expect him to say, no, it was an inadequate interview?
Oh, no, I don't. I'm just, a little too much of a lawyer sometimes.
Okay,
I'll
let's have
let
another
that-
question.
I will, thanks. Going back to Sarah McDowell, was there, first of all, an attempt to figure out who was in that car that Mr. Ellis had contact with before he had contact with officers Burbank and Collins?
Yes.
And what was done in that regard?
We looked for any kind of witnesses or video in that area, obviously, and also west to where they talked about the car leaving towards, to see if it was captured anywhere. And then, I talked about it earlier, the first week of June, we put out a press release asking if the occupant of the vehicle would come forward.
And when you say we, is that the Pierce County Sheriff's Department?
Yes.
Is it a specific division of the Sheriff's Department that did that?
Yeah, our public media department.
Did you get any information as a result of that press release?
No.
Now, Sarah McDowell at some point was contacted in connection with your investigation. Did you view any media that she participated in before you saw her video or obtained her video?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we saw it on different media outlets.
Like what?
CNN.
Okay, so she was on CNN before you got her interview?
Well,
Or her tape, excuse me.
we never officially received it.
Can you explain that? How that happened?
The kind of.
Your Honor, there's been some preliminary timing motions eliminated that address.
I'm just asking how, I'm not aware of what any order would be on that, Your Honor. I'm just asking how they came to have any information or obtaining that video. I can ask a different question to move it along, Your Honor.
Well, that would help me out.
I'd like to do that, Your Honor. So with respect to this video of Sarah McDowell, did you receive it directly from Sarah McDowell?
No.
Who, if anyone, did you receive it from?
I believe Detective Helmke recorded it from CNN, and it was also on Twitter. Another,
Twitter.
yeah.
And do you remember who posted it on Twitter?
Tacoma Action Collective.
Tacoma Action Collective. Do you know what that is?
Not sure.
Okay. Now, you were asked about Mendel Everson. Did you remember that name?
Yes.
And why were you looking for Mendel Everson in connection with your investigation in this case?
He's a roommate that we learned of, and we're trying to determine if he had been with Mr. Ellis that night.
Did you ever have direct contact with Mr. Everson?
Not me personally.
Did he ever go back to that home where he was a roommate with Mr. Ellis, that you know
Your
of?
Honor, calls for speculation.
I said that he knows of.
To the extent you have any knowledge, sure, but you can answer.
I don't know.
I'm sorry, you don't know?
I don't know.
But you don't know of him going back to that residence after this incident involving Manuel Ellis. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I don't know if he, I was told he didn't go back. Yeah, sorry.
And you were never able, obviously, to interview him because you didn't have contact with him, right?
Not directly, no.
And did you attempt to contact his mother?
Yeah, I had phone call to her, and she just also put it on speakerphone during one of our interviews.
I'm gonna switch gears and ask you about, whether during your investigation, you found out at the time of this incident, back in March of 2020, whether Mr. Ellis was on pretrial release for a serious violent offense, which also involved
Objection, Your Honor.
methamphetamine.
Objection. This violates motion order.
I'm not sure that it does, but, hold on a second. I'm going to excuse the jury for a moment while we have this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, please do not discuss the case. Do we need to excuse a witness?
Oh, I don't have a preference, Your Honor, I'm happy to stay.
State one, excuse a witness.
Doesn't matter, Your Honor.
Okay.
There's a couple of issues here. The court is allowing the 2019 incident. Serious violent is not permissible in referencing that. Which is how she described it. In addition
No,
to
she
that,
did. I'm just trying to think, though, wasn't it attempted robbery 2? Is that what the charge was?
Robbery 2 was probable cause for attempted robbery 2, but it was robbery 2, but even that's not serious violence.
It's a violent offense, not a serious violent offense.
So,
Right.
and we've had the discussion, the state had proposed calling it a felony, defense had proposed calling it a violent felony. The court's never come down on what the proper is, but serious violence is certainly not it.
No, that's actually incorrect. At some point in time, I think the actual, when a question was asked earlier, I think on cross-examination of some of these folks, I think the actual charge was mentioned.
That's correct. And that was not what was the ruling of the court previously.
So,
I'm happy to just call it a robbery, Your Honor.
is that a problem?
Should be called a felony, Your Honor. And if she's gonna call it a robbery, then a robbery second.
That's fine. You have to call it what it is, Your Honor.
Okay. Yeah,
I would note, Your Honor, that you had previously ruled that we're not going into the underlying facts of the incident. It was only into
right, but
interaction with law enforcement.
although we may wind up getting there yet, because it's already come up indirectly a couple of different times about Mr. Ellis's physical condition in September, that, for instance, for instance, Dr. Mitchell mentioned his chipped teeth, and then it turned out the chipped teeth was a result of that September incident. At least that was alleged.
Your Honor, that was alleged, and they can't open the door.
No, but the word, as I say, robbery 2, robbery in second degree came up before. And there was also some discussion about injuries, and I believe this came up during the state's case, injuries that Mr. Ellis sustained at the time of the September incident, how he was badly injured and that kind of stuff.
And those injuries were sustained at the restaurant, not at the hands of law enforcement.
No,
There's testimony
I understand that, but that's exactly the point, isn't it? I mean, that the defense wants to point out that he got these injuries in September because he tried to rob this store and the store employees, I guess, hit him with a root beer mug.
And how is that relevant to this case, Your Honor? In addition to that.
No, but it's, no, you asked me a question, I'll answer it. You guys brought it up during, I think it was his sister's testimony, about how he was injured substantially as a result of that event. And now it seems, and we know the police were involved. You gotta let me finish or I'm gonna get a permanent stutter. And so now the defense doesn't want the jury to be left with this deal, the idea that, when he had a police confrontation in September, the police were brutal to him. Now they're brutal to him again. So they're going to want to point out, he didn't receive those injuries at the hands of the police in September.
Right, Your Honor, and that's exactly what you said in your preliminary ruling when we had the motions back in,
Yeah,
I think it was early September. And part of that was, we needed to make sure that the testimony came out, that it was not due to law enforcement brutal behavior. So that was covered. That doesn't turn into a serious violent offense. That doesn't.
no, listen, she's wrong about that, and we're all agreed that she's wrong about that.
And it's already out there. It's been
She mean Miss
clarified-
Bremner is wrong about
It's
that.
been clarified to the jurors
Wrong
that
about
that
what,
was,
Your Honor?
it's been clarified to the jurors that any injury that was caused to Mr. Ellis on the September 2019 incident
Right.
was caused during the incident, not from law enforcement.
Right, but can I just say one other thing? You know, you're premature about all this. Because she asked him, did you learn in your investigation that Mr. Ellis was having an issue with a pretrial release violation as a result of this second-degree robbery charge? Which has nothing to do with what happened at the robbery. But you've gone into that now. I'm wondering why.
Why I've got,
Now, I grant you,
I got into the objection because of the way she characterized it.
well, that was, and you were right about that.
So, if she's gonna stop there with, and he says, no, I wasn't aware of that, then great, we got excuse the jury and we know where we're headed. And we're not getting
I
into
don't know.
the underlying.
Probably not with this witness anyway, but it may come up.
Right, and I just wanna, I mean, I don't know where Ms. Berner plans on going after this, about that incident.
Does any of us? Does Ms. Bremner?
I do, Your Honor, actually. I think that we also heard from Mr. Ellis's sister, though, the implication that the injuries were not from the employees. So I think that, as the court states, I mean, that we have to.
Yeah, but
But that's not
how,
what he
hold on,
testified to.
hold on. How is this witness gonna tell us anything about it? When you, I mean, you know, with all due respect here, the vast majority of questions that you've been asking Lieutenant Brockway is, did Mr. Rankine do this, did he do that, did he do this other thing? He doesn't have personal knowledge about. And on some of these objections I sustained because of the way they were worded, you could certainly talk about what the statements were, and we've already heard them, and, you know, so it's, to some extent, we're, as I often like to say, we're bouncing the rubble here. I mean, we're bombing the same area we bombed already, so I'm not sure why we're going over it.
Well, no, Your Honor, most of what I've asked about Officer Rankine are from his statements in his investigation.
Right, but that's not how you're, it's not how you're couching the question. Did Officer Rankine hit Ellis? No. Did he tase him? No. He didn't use LVNR? No. Not like Rankine said he didn't hit him. Rankine said he didn't tase him. Rankine said he, none of that stuff came in that way. It was like, it's as if Lieutenant Brockway is testifying as a fact witness of what he actually knows from his own personal knowledge.
I
And,
think
and a lot of the questions were like that. I didn't get objections to them, but they were all objectionable. And so, yes, I'm worried about where you're going next.
Well, Your Honor, I think that I've been asking all about the statement. I should have started the preamble to each based upon the statement of Officer Rankine. Did you understand X? But I can go on. What I'm going to do on this is that he was on pretrial release, that he was not allowed to have methamphetamine to use or to possess as part of that pretrial release at the time of this
Well,
offense.
the lieutenant might know what his conditions of pretrial release are. I don't know. Do you know that? There you go. Says he doesn't.
You know.
Nods his head no, anyway.
Shakes his head no, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
And that also that that he had to be tased in that incident, and he charged the officers who didn't follow commands.
I don't know if he knows about any of that either.
Do you know about that?
I had reviewed that incident, the 2019.
That's what I will do. That's what I
Okay.
intend to ask.
Is there some video of this whole thing?
Yes.
Showing him getting tased and stuff?
And is there a point that this is cumulative, Your Honor, because it's been brought out before? And there's no dispute.
Of anybody who's asking about cumulative. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
We're ready, Your Honor, that's all I was gonna go into on this, not just about
Right.
that.
It's, don't refer to this as a serious violent offense. By law, it's not. And that has precise legal meaning, so it's better that you would simply refer to it as whatever the charge was, which was, I guess, second-degree robbery.
That's fine with me, Your Honor.
All right,
I'm ready.
let's have the jury come back.
Thank you. Is that okay with the functions? You sure you don't want water?
Oh, I'm good, I got some.
I'm almost done.
There, I saw it.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Please be seated. Okay, the last objection is sustained. New question.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes.
Thank you. During your investigation, you found out at the time of this incident that Mr. Ellis was on pretrial release for robbery in the second degree that involved methamphetamine. Is that right?
No, I wasn't aware he was on pretrial release.
That the matter was pending for robbery in the second degree involving methamphetamine?
Objection, Your Honor, he's answered the question.
She's rewording it. You may answer.
No. I don't, yeah.
Are you aware of any matter pending that occurred 5 months before our
Objection,
incident?
Your Honor.
You'll get one more chance at this, Ms. Brumner, but I'm not sure how far you're going to get. Go ahead.
I'll give it a try, Your Honor. Were you aware of a matter involving a robbery in the second degree allegedly committed by Mr. Ellis that occurred 5 months before our incident involving methamphetamine?
Yes.
Okay. And were you aware that there was a requirement that he not consume drugs?
Objection, Your Honor, it's already answered.
I'll allow this. You may answer.
I didn't look into the pretrial release paperwork or conditions of release.
What are conditions of release?
Depends on the case. Oftentimes there will be report to the probation officer, depending if it's a driving offense or DUIs to stay sober or drug-related offense, not possess weapons. It really depends on the case.
So a drug-related offense, not to consume or possess drugs, I assume would be a condition of release, typically.
Yes.
Okay. During the apprehension and arrest of Mr. Ellis during the incident 5 months prior to ours, and I know you've reviewed the report, isn't it true that he resisted arrest and had to be tased multiple times?
Yes.
And he also charged the officers, is that right?
Yes.
And he also did not follow commands, isn't that true?
Yes.
Location 96 in Aidensworth, is it fair to say it's a high crime area and was back on March 3rd of 2020?
Your Honor, outside the scope of the
With respect to your investigation, I've already asked you about that these types of investigations are taken and done in connection with any in custody death. Are you responsible for securing the scene, and did you?
Yes.
And you form a team?
A team responded, yes, to investigate.
Were you in charge of that team?
Yes.
And the officers involved, of course, were identified and interviewed.
Yes.
And in this case, it was Lieutenant Messinio? Yes?
Yes.
Detective Male Sergeant Sanders? Yes?
Yes.
Officer Burbank?
Yes.
Officer Collins?
Yes.
And Officer Rankin?
Yes.
And finally, Officer Ford.
Yes.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Redirect.
Lieutenant, you were asked a series of questions by Ms. Brenner regarding Lieutenant Rankin's conduct during this incident. You recall that line of questioning?
Yes.
And all of your answers to that line of questioning were based on Lieutenant Rankin's statement.
Yes.
You have no personal knowledge other than from his statement.
Objection leading.
Yes.
I had published 898, Your Honor, as previously admitted for electoral purposes.
No objection.
The timeline that we had up earlier and the timeline we
Ah.
had on.
Yes, go right ahead.
Thank you. And Lieutenant, over the lunch hour, did you get a chance to review a report from one other TPD officer to refresh your memory?
Yes.
And Hanny what's been marked states Exhibit 702. Whose report is that? And I know the name is difficult to say, so if you want to spell the name, that's fine too.
Yeah, I'll spell it out. It's KOMAROVSKY. An officer with the Tacoma Police Department. And this was a .3, so the third report written.
So when you initially investigated this case, you reviewed the reports from TPD officers, including that report.
Yes.
And although not appearing on the CAD timeline, because it doesn't appear on the CAD that you testified to on Thursday, is it clear that the officer was present on the scene shortly after, or within the same time period as the others that are depicted on 898?
Wait a minute. Can I see this?
You'd be on the scope.
So I believe Mr. Purser looked through the timeline. And I believe Mr. Carmen's also did.
Okay, what's the question? Again.
Your Honor, just that an officer was also present on scene at approximately the same time as the other officers that are noted on 898.
Go ahead and ask your question.
Lieutenant, is that accurate that Officer Kolanowski was also present on scene around that time period as the other officers that are depicted on 898?
Yes.
You were asked some questions about Sergeant Lim on cross-examination. Did you ever interview Sergeant Lim?
I spoke to him briefly at the precinct, but not a interview.
And during your investigation, was there any evidence that Mr. Ellis was armed with a weapon at all at the time of the interaction with the defendants?
No.
No further questions?
Yeah, I'd like to take a look at 702. Yes. Lieutenant, based upon the report that was prepared by Officer Komarovsky, he was not only present, but he actually assisted in the restraint of Mr.
Objection,
Ellis.
Your Honor, false for hearsay. He didn't, the document was utilized to refresh his recollection on whether or not he was present, not on the actions. And I didn't have him read from the document. So there's no rule of completeness that would apply.
Your Honor, objections, making objections.
I'm going to let her speak, but I'm going to excuse the jury while we have this conversation. You're getting your exercise, ladies and gentlemen. Please do not discuss the case. Okay, please be seated, everybody. Well, look. As I understand Exhibit 702, Officer Konorowski indicates that he was there and actually was present and partially involved in holding Mr. Ellis down. Right? That's what it says. No one's otherwise talked about his involvement in this thing. The question that the state asked of him was, looking at this report, do you know that Officer Konorowski was there?
Your Honor, actually, I asked him prior to that if he refreshed his recollection over the lunch hour by reviewing the report for the timing, but if he was there. It's not reading from the report, that's not going through line by line what's in the report, but based on the timing that he was there.
But did you know that Officer Konorowski was there, Lieutenant?
Yes, based on reviewing the reports.
Before you reviewed the report, when you were doing this thing that night, did you know he was there?
Yeah. Yes, Your Honor.
The report was written on 3/4, Your Honor.
No, I get it. For the report itself is sort of self-explanatory about that. All I guess I was getting is the way you asked the question, it was like, here, this report says he was there, so he was there, right? And he said, well, yeah.
The prior question before that was, over the lunch hour, you reviewed his report to refresh your recollection on whether or not he was there or not.
How did that happen? I mean, I'm not a rock. I mean, the state suggested it to the witness
I asked him to review it and see if it refreshed his recollection. Yes, I did.
about Officer Konorowski being there. All right, but even though it kind of gets to the idea that the report is testifying here, you still got this problem, Mr. Purcher, do you not, that with the contents of the report and our not personal knowledge of this witness?
Well, the content of the report says what the officer did. participating in the arrest and the detention of Mr. Ellis, and to leave it hanging out there is a little disingenuous.
Well, you can call Officer Konarowski, I suppose, or somebody else who saw him there and saw him do whatever he did. And although I don't know how far you'll get with that. But Lieutenant, while I got you here, so this report of Officer Konarowski, how did that inform your investigation?
It was just another report that was documented who was there. We asked that everybody who was, I think I've asked Sergeant Lim, whoever was there, to write a report on scene.
Sure. Did you know about this Officer Konarowski being there? But he had departed before you got there, right?
Yes, so I read
So-
it later.
So you only found out about it when you read his report, is that right?
Yes.
And had you known about his presence earlier, would you have asked him to be photographed at the sheriff's precinct, for instance, like with the other officers?
I guess I didn't know his involvement.
No, you didn't know it, I understand, you didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
Had you known, would you have had him photographed?
Potentially.
Your Honor, clearly exceeds the scope of the redirect. I mean, I asked him about the time, he knew all the other people that were there and didn't interview them. He already testified he didn't interview any of the other officers besides the ones that he selected.
Yeah, but it occurs to me that, it seems to me, Sergeant Lim was photographed, right?
No, no,
Or somebody else, who was it?
no. It was only the Pierce County guys that were on scene, which is Detective Sergeant Sanders, now Major, and then Lieutenant Massinio. And then you've got.
Lieutenant Massinio, that's who it was.
Yeah.
Why was Lieutenant Massinio photographed?
He wasn't hands-on.
Right, all the more reason to wonder. Do you know? Do you know why Lieutenant Massinio was photographed? Lieutenant?
All four of the officers and Massinio and Sanders, I apologize, were sent to the precinct, and they were photographed by our forensics. Is this part of the scene?
Why not Sergeant Lim?
In reviewing, well, I don't know if he was hands-on, if he was on hands-on or not.
Did you think Massinio was hands-on?
No.
So why do you think you might have had Konarowski photographed? Because he was hands-on?
Yeah, potentially. I can't speak to exactly how they picked who got photographed.
I mean, that's why Officer Ford was photographed, right?
Yes, yes.
And Mr. Wilkins just photographed who he's told to photograph, right?
Yeah, who was there, yeah, at the precinct.
Okay. Anyway, so now where do you want to go with this?
Well, I just went to reference that he actually was hands-on in Mr. Ellis at the time, as part of his involvement. That was the next question, that was the next question, I was trying to get.
How does he know?
Well, it was from his review of everything, and he's the lead investigator of this investigation, so.
If he said that so-and-so shot somebody, would you let him testify to that, just because it was his investigation that says?
It depends on the circumstance.
Well, does it hurt your side or not? Is that what I'm getting, Mr. Berger? Anyway, it's not of his personal knowledge.
That's fine. Judge, let me, if I might, ask, Lieutenant, two additional questions so we can avoid the jury going back up again.
Sure.
Lieutenant, how long did your investigation last?
From March 3rd until around 17th of June.
Of when?
June.
Okay, and you know why your investigation ended that time?
The case was turned over to State Patrol.
And you know why that occurred?
I think it was the prosecutor's office and our sheriff decided to turn it over
Okay,
for conflict.
for conflict?
Yeah, that's what I recall.
Just want to see if those are questions or objections.
Defense have an objection? State?
Your Honor, I think it's outside the scope of the direct and redirect. We specifically didn't go there. We're really looking at preliminary motions and eliminate. What the motions eliminate that we had, we specifically didn't go down that path with them.
Well, didn't we say with respect to the motion to eliminate
There
that,
was a motion eliminated that was just going to be direct and that it got handed off to WSP without going through the details.
well, without finding any ethical problem by the sheriff's office, right? Didn't we talk about that?
We never did, no, we never had them testify to that.
No.
We talked about
In our
it.
motions, we talked about that.
In motions, we talked about it, so we wanted to stay clear, and so we never brought it up during.
Well, that's
direct
fine.
or redirect.
But, there's a part of me that says, yeah, okay, it's outside the scope of direct examination, but do I have to bring him back again in 3 weeks?
I'm not sure how relevant it is that it got handed off.
Ah, well, now there's another
How
reason.
relevant it is on why it got handed off to WSP. But we're trying to not draw attention to it, I guess.
Well, right, I mean, the deal was is that there's potential,
I'll stay with the question. That's
no, it's up to you, I said, but there was potentially a concern about, because this may come up with other defenses, I don't know. A concern about whether or not the Pierce County Sheriff's Office was somehow compromised by how they handled the matter in any sort of way. And that the investigation changed merely, just like it was handed off from TPD to Pierce County Sheriff's Office to avoid any appearance of a problem, without there being any problem, simply because there had been some Pierce County folks who had responded to this thing. And so it wasn't because of any concern about the way the investigation itself was handled, which I think, is, because otherwise it makes Lieutenant Brockway look bad. And it's reasonable for him for someone to try to explain that it had nothing to do with how he performed his job. So, anyway, we're getting close to our break. Let's have the jury back and see if we can at least complete Lieutenant Brockway. Welcome back, everyone. Please be seated. Objection sustained. New question.
Thank you, Judge. If we could publish Exhibit 98 again, please. Lieutenant, giving you back Exhibit 702, we have the individual officers in this exhibit that responded. Can you determine when Officer Komorowski arrived in relation to the other individuals that are present?
There's no arrival time listed on his report.
Does he reference when in relation to other officers he arrived?
Yeah, he was behind Sergeant Rock and Officer Bras, B-R-A-S,
Okay, so
B-R-A-H-S.
So within that 15-second period of time between 23, 25, 22, and 23, 25, 37,
Yes,
and so that would put 18 police officers at the scene within 3 minutes, correct?
yes,
And then total would be 20 police officers from the Tacoma Police Department, Pierce County Sheriff's Department, Washington State Patrol, and the City of Lakewood,
yes,
all responding to this.
yes.
And with respect to individuals who actually had hands-on Mr. Ellis, do you have an understanding of how many of these police officers actually were in physical contact with Mr. Ellis?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sorry, say it again if you would.
Do you know how many?
Objection, I think, were you asking him to say it again or me to say it?
I was asking him to say it again, so I wasn't sure I heard the full question.
Do you know how many police officers actually had physical contact with Mr. Ellis?
No objection, Your Honor, it's only for your sake.
Sustained.
But there's 20 police officers total that were present this evening.
Yes.
That's all the question.
Lieutenant Brockway, all the officers that were at the scene, these are the only three that have been charged with the crime, right?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance?
Sustained.
Straight.
There's been no answer.
I guess disregard me.
I can disregard, I've been wanting to say this for a while. I can disregard counsel. No, not picking on you. It's just too juicy a thing to pass up every now and then.
Lieutenant, so Mr. Purser asked you about your investigation. You said it lasted about 3.5 months, is that right?
Yes,
And during that time, I assume evidence was trickling in. Is that what happened?
yes,
Is that pretty common in an investigation like this?
yes,
And one of the things you do, and you talk about this, is you canvass the neighborhood, you look around for people who might have doorbell cameras or other security cameras, is that right?
yes,
And that takes time, of course.
yes,
And in an investigation like this, those types of things might come in days, weeks, months after the fact, is that right?
correct,
And sometimes they're on cell phone videos that people maybe took as they drove by or walked by,
correct.
correct? And you did the press release you mentioned about the quest for 300. When did you do that? Do you remember?
I think it was around June, I said the first week of June, but I think it was around the 4th of June?
Okay, all right, so about a month after, or 3 months after?
Yes,
Okay, so you're investigating all this time, and you're canvassing the neighborhood. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Did you go door to door looking for?
No, this is outside the scope of where you were at.
No, it's not.
Did you go door to door looking for additional video evidence of this situation?
yes, we, a couple different times of different members of our team went out, just a couple times we had a map, making sure we checked every house that we could within the radius. And if we didn't have an answer to the door, we might leave a business card, ask them to call. So we canvass multiple different days and times.
And the officers were aware that you would be engaging in that process for several months after this incident, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance? Also calls for speculation.
You may answer.
Yes,
And despite that, they gave you voluntary statements just a few days after?
Yes.
Nothing further, thank you.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Nothing from the state, Your Honor, thank you.
That'd be one thing.
Okay. Lieutenant, you're excused. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our afternoon recess at this time for 15 minutes. Please do not discuss case among yourselves or with anyone else. Thank you.
So it's 10A, 231, and 230. They're the ones that Lieutenant Brockway testified to. We anticipate the witness's testimony will be that that piece of paper was given to Mr. Ellis about 10:30 that night. And that was what was found on his bed, so it would be within that time frame.
So why should we let these in? He did testify about it, it's true. We should let them in because of why?
Your Honor, the document was a blank piece of paper that was given by Mr. Armstrong to Mr. Ellis at about 10:30, 10:35 that night. And Mr. Ellis wrote some notes on that to contact his son, appears to be stay sober, and 3 crosses. And then on the backside it also says who may concern. And it goes to his state of mind at the time.
It says who may concern, and then it's blank
That's the backside.
on the backside. And then there's 3 crosses, he said.
10A and 10 are the same sheet of paper.
He described this as a to-do list. It's not exactly that.
I think it's to stay sober, to call his son, and I think Keene County is on there.
Is that supposed to be a phone number?
Yes.
It's missing a digit. I'm not sure that much matters. Okay. Defense has an objection to this.
Your Honor, we just don't think they're relevant for any purpose. Issues in this case, and so, that's the basis of the objection. On all the photographs, including the photos of what was found on the bed and the Bible, specifically, I guess, is what they're trying to have in the evidence. Clearly, that's just something that's done to show some type of character evidence that should not be relevant.
Mr. Evans?
Agreed, Your Honor.
Agreed, Judge.
This is relevant to what? This is going to show us what?
Goes to his state of mind, Your Honor. The note goes to his state of mind. The location on the bed is where it was found.
State of mind?
Within an hour of the time in which you had contact with him.
But we don't know when this was written.
We know that it was written that night, Your Honor. That's why I'm saying that blank sheet of paper,
Yeah.
the blank sheet of paper that Mr. Armstrong gave him at about 10:35 that night. And that was written prior to leaving for the 7-Eleven.
I don't see its relevance. I mean, the business about remaining sober, or it says remain SOB, so I assume that's what it refers to as well, but we know that if that was written after 4 o'clock in the afternoon that day, which you're suggesting it was, this was written after he was already trying to score methamphetamine. And maybe before he used it. So what does that tell us? Anything at all? You said it has to do with his state of mind, you know. I could have a desire to stay sober. Doesn't mean I did stay sober. Right? I don't. And the photographs of the bed with apparently the note on it is to suggest where it came from. Here's another one, Susan. Susan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Isn't that one? It's not, none of this is relevant to prove any matter at issue in this case. As I asked before, the state's not trying to prove he wasn't under the influence of methamphetamine, I don't think. If that was somehow a contested issue, then this might have more importance.
Well, the contested issue is how that methamphetamine affected him.
Then we don't know that he wrote that under the influence either. Right? All right, so I don't see any relevance to it. So if you're offering it, and are you in fact offering it?
Well, the state was, Your Honor. I think that the court just ruled that it's not relevant,
Well, you gotta offer it first, but you said you wanted me to look at it because they were gonna complain about it.
You told me last week that anytime we have a photograph, if it's gonna be objected to, actually 2 weeks ago, if it's gonna be objected to, you want it addressed on the record outside the presence of the jury.
Sure,
So that's what I did.
okay. You still have to say you wanna offer it. I assume you do.
The state wants to offer it, and
And the objections to them are apparently sustained, so none of them are admitted. So that's 10A, what were the numbers again?
10, 10A, 230, and 231.
Okay. Objection sustained. Are we ready for the witness?
State's ready, Your Honor.
We ready, counsel?
Yes.
Welcome back, everybody. Please be seated. Okay, the next witness, please.
Your Honor, is state called Cedric Armstrong.
Yes, sir. Please come forward to right about here. Right about here. There we go. Thank you very much. Yeah, you're in the right spot. Please raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that your testimony in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much, sir. Have a seat right here. Please state your name and please spell your name.
My name is Cedric Lamont Armstrong, Cedric Armstrong.
Okay, you're a witness.
Good afternoon, Mr. Armstrong.
Good afternoon.
Could you please tell the jury a little bit of background about yourself? Who are you married to?
My wife is Kimberly Mays, and she is a OPD social worker for the state of Washington, and I am a substance use disorder professional at CMAR Adult Treatment Facility here in Tacoma.
What's a substance abuse professional do at CMAR?
We are basically counselors for someone who has addiction, whether it's alcohol or drugs.
How long have you been working for CMAR?
About a year and a half.
And do you and your wife also have business, residential homes?
Yes, we do. We operate and own 4 recovery transitional housing units here in Tacoma. One in Tacoma, one in Parkland, Spanaway, and Lakewood.
And what's the name of the homes that you operate?
It's God's Hand Up Recovery Housing.
What are the rules for residents to stay in your homes?
Well, there's kind of like 5 sticklets that you do a chore once a day. You pay your rent on time, don't use drugs, and go to church once a week.
Do you and your wife, and are those the same rules that were in place back in March of 2020?
Yes.
And do you and your wife also have random UAs done of residents?
Yes, we do. We also help our clients like get back into school, help them find jobs, network through all our houses.
And if an individual relapses, what steps are taken?
If someone relapses, we ask that they, depending on what the drug is, either go to detox and we would save their room for them, and they would have to go back to treatment for at least 30 days, and then they could come back to the house. We'd save that room for them.
And both in your profession at CMAR, in addition to running the 4 residential homes for individuals who suffer from substance abuse, do you have the opportunity to observe individuals under the influence of controlled substances?
Every day.
Does that include methamphetamine?
Methamphetamine also, yes.
And based on your training, experience, and your work within CMAR and at the residence, what behaviors do you look for when somebody is under the influence of methamphetamine?
Well, as far as meth goes, the temperament goes up. If I know at that time there was some bad meth that was out there was causing people psychosis. They're restless and argumentative.
Does that everybody respond the same way?
No, not at all. Not at all. Just like the human body, every drug, everyone.
Well, he says he is a substance abuse counselor. I don't know we did much about his education or training for that, but are you offering him as an expert witness?
Not as a,
I'm going to permit him to testify as to this based on his experience at least. Go ahead. You may continue
Repeat
your
the
answer.
question.
Had to do with the temperament of folks on methamphetamine, isn't that right?
does everybody respond the same? And go ahead.
Based on each individual, individual drugs affect people differently. Some people that would be, say, addicted to alcohol, and another person will respond totally differently. So some people would respond different to cocaine in their system than someone who doesn't do cocaine and it's in their system. So based on how much they use, how long they've been using, all those factors go into key on someone's behavior.
And based on your training and experience, have you observed individuals under the influence of methamphetamine that react one way at one time and differently another time when they're under the influence?
Usually a person's drug of choice, they usually act a certain way when they're on a drug, if it's their drug of choice.
When you had you have the opportunity to know Mr. Ellis?
Yes, ma'am.
And how did you come to know him?
I met Manny at Pierce County Alliance, and I want to say that was in 2019 or 2020. I'm sorry.
If this incident happened on March 3rd of 2020, about how far before that?
So it had to been in December, maybe. I know Manny was there before I was there. I don't want to.
That's okay. Did you also go there for treatment and counseling?
Yes, ma'am.
And so in December of,
Okay, when you say he was there before you were there, you're talking about at Pierce County Alliance?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Just want to be clear.
Sorry, Your Honor.
What we were talking about. Go ahead.
and so in December of 2019, were you at Pierce County Alliance?
Yes, ma'am.
And you said that you met Mr. Ellis at that time?
Manny knew me and my wife. He had heard that we were doing housing, and he had approached me and said, hey, man, I know you don't know me, but I'm trying to get off these streets. And he said, I don't have any money. What can you do? And I called my wife, and I said, hey, I met this guy. He seems kind of, straight up telling me, that he was in a predicament. And she said, it's your call. And I said, I got a room for you. And he kind of broke down, and I was just in awe that this big guy was just melted in front of me and was so humble and appreciative at that moment. So we took him in.
And was that in the early part of December of 2019? Prior to Christmas?
Yes, it was.
And you say that you took him in. What residence did you take him into first?
At that time, Manny moved to the 43rd Street house.
Did you live at the 43rd Street house at that time?
No. We had already moved to the 102nd Street house at that time. And we rented out the 43rd Street house to people in recovery.
And what was the address of the 102nd Street house?
1815 102nd Street South, Tacoma, Washington, 98444.
And did Mr. Ellis eventually move to the 102nd Street house?
He did.
Do you know approximately what time that was?
I cannot recall, honestly, when he moved from 43rd. I'm trying to nail that date, but honestly, I can't. I want to say February, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
So he had been living at that residence prior to this incident?
Yeah, we moved Manny over there after we had an incident at the 43rd Street house where,
Your Honor, I would object as to relevance to the incident at 43rd Street.
Your Honor, if I can have a little bit of room to lead to get to the point.
I'll sustain the objection.
Mr. Armstrong, when you moved Manny to the 102nd Street house, that wasn't due to anything about any action of Mr. Ellis?
no, it was not.
And both those homes have the same rules?
Yes, all four of our houses have the exact same rules.
And in February and March of 2020, where were you and Kim, your wife Kim, living?
In February, 102nd Street house.
And how was that house set up as far as where the residents' rooms are at versus where your living quarters are at?
Well, we had the master bedroom upstairs, and we have 4 bedrooms downstairs that we had remodeled a unfinished basement into 4 rooms, and a bathroom and a kitchen, laundry room. And then upstairs, there were, I believe, so it was a 9-bedroom. So upstairs was 5, and that was basically our family, our immediate family.
And the basement, where the residents were at, did that also have a separate entrance?
It
and
did.
exit?
It did.
Who did Mr. Ellis share a room with at that time?
Oh, gosh, I'm trying to remember his last name. It was Mandel. I believe it was Mandel. I can't remember his last name.
Thank you. In the time that Mr. Ellis was living with you, were you aware of any health issues that he had?
No, not even when he was at the 43rd Street. You know. No.
And in your experience with him at the 102nd Street house, was it typical for him to go to the 7-Eleven down the street to get snacks at night? In your experience with Mr. Ellis, was there anything that he would do almost on a nightly basis?
Let's talk about the night question, counsel.
Your Honor, it goes to the night question. But
Then ask about the night in question.
certainly, Your Honor. Do you recall the day and night of March 3rd, 2020?
Yes, ma'am.
And when did you first have contact with Mr. Ellis?
That day,
He hasn't answered the question.
Can you give us an estimate as to what time you first saw Mr. Ellis on March 3rd, 2020?
so we had a church revival that started at night, and so he came to me and woke me up and said, "Hey, are we going to the church revival?"
What time did he wake you up?
I want to say it was around 6 or so, because the church revival, I believe, started at 7.
So around 6 PM?
I would say somewhere around there.
Okay, next question.
Did you have any prior contact with him that day besides before 6 p.m.?
Before 6 p.m., I know we were working on the Wi-Fi's, but earlier that day, we were working on the Wi-Fi. Me and Manny was looking at a video of drummers. We both play the drums.
Response to the question as to what time you had contact with him.
Well, the question is, did he have any contact with him earlier than the day, before 6 PM? But the whole question about 6 PM was, when did you have first contact with him that day? Presumably it was at 6 PM. He wouldn't have had any other contact with him earlier than that, if that was his first
That's why I
contact.
was asking for clarification, Your Honor, because there's
I'm not sure what the relevance would be before 6 PM anyway.
We'll go from 6 p.m. You testified that at about 6 p.m., Mr. Ellis woke you up to go to church.
Yes.
About what time did you go to church?
Church started at 7.
Approximately what time was church done?
Church was done at, I want to say 9:30.
And did Mr. Ellis go to church with you that night?
Yes, he did.
And how many, were you in the same vehicle?
Yes, we were.
Approximately what time did you get home?
We got home, so can I backtrack a little? I think we got home around 9:30.
What
Go ahead.
happened when you got home around 9:30?
When we got home, I asked, I was about to cook, and I asked Manny if he wanted a burger. Before I got started, me and Manny were working on Wi-Fi extenders through the house. And so after we did that, I started cooking and made everybody burgers.
Do you know approximately what time you finished eating dinner?
So I know I'm gonna say around 10-something, Manny went downstairs with his burger. At 10:35, and the reason why I know this time is because I had actually looked at the clock. He came upstairs and asked me for a piece of paper. And I was like,
Object. Relevance to that.
Your Honor, it's the contact they just had with them at 10:35 at night.
Objection sustained.
After Mr. Ellis goes down, well, let's backtrack. From the time that you recall him waking you up at about 6 o'clock at night to the time that he goes downstairs with his burger, did he appear to be, how would you describe his behavior?
Manny was really happy that we had went to the revival. You know, he was just being helpful, and that's where we started doing the Wi-Fi. He's like, man, let me help you out, Ced, and stuff like that. He didn't seem, I'll say it like this, he didn't seem like he was off in any kind of way.
When was the last point of contact that you had with Mr. Ellis that night? Approximately what time?
It was the 10:35 when he came up and asked for a piece of blank paper.
And when you saw him at about 10:35 and he asked for a piece of paper, was there anything about his demeanor or behavior that was out of the normal?
Not at all.
Did he appear to be under the influence of controlled substance
No,
to you
I
at all?
object as to lack of foundation.
I'll permit this. You may answer.
Did he appear to be under the influence of a controlled substance at all during your contact with him?
Not at all.
At some point, after you gave him a piece of paper, were you made aware of his plans for the night?
Were you made aware of? Are you saying, did Mr. Ellis tell him? Is that the question?
I asked a yes or no. He answered for not to say.
Sounds like hearsay.
I'll move on to another question. Mr. Armstrong, there's a 7-Eleven that's located on Hosmer, or Steele and 96, which is down from your house. Are you aware of the 7-Eleven then?
Yes, I am.
And about how long does it take to walk from that 7-Eleven, from your house to that 7-Eleven?
I'd say about 12 minutes, maybe 12 to 15, maybe, if you walk in just a regular pace.
Did you see Mr. Ellis leave the house at all that night?
I did not.
So when was the 10:35 your last contact?
It was.
Did you hear the door downstairs open or close all that night?
I did not.
And in the time that you were with him that day and night, did you notice anything odd about him? No, he was very energetic, but I mean, I don't want to get in trouble. No, I did not notice anything out of the norm that night. How did you come to learn of Mr. Ellis's death?
In the morning, his sister called my wife, and I to my surprise, I was like, what's going on? They were screaming, and I was like, he's downstairs. What are you guys talking about? And I ran downstairs to his room, and he was not there.
Were you there that month on March 12th of 2020 interviewed by Pierce County Sheriff's detectives?
I would say yes.
Nothing else on the state, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Fricke or Mr. Pertzer? Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Armstrong.
Good afternoon.
We've never spoken, is that fair to say?
That's,
To your knowledge, anyway?
yes, sir.
We've never met.
We've never met.
Probably a better question. So, on this evening of March 3rd of 2020, you had contact with Mr. Ellis, as you indicated.
Yes.
He's downstairs, the last time you see him is approximately 10:35, and then he went back downstairs, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then you haven't seen him since, obviously.
Yes.
At 10:35, when he went downstairs, was your expectation that he was gonna stay at the house at that particular time, or did you know?
Yes, because we normally have a curfew.
And what time is the curfew?
So the curfew is usually at 10 o'clock, and then it's on the weekends, it's at 12.
Okay, and this was a Tuesday night, I believe, is that correct?
Yes, so,
And so curfew, he was past curfew at 10:35 then,
yes,
and he was home, obviously, at that point.
yes, because he was with us.
Correct. And so if he's abiding by the rules, he wouldn't be leaving the house at 10:35.
Is that a yes or no, or can I respond?
That is a yes or no.
Okay. Unless he tells us, yes.
And he didn't tell you he was leaving.
He didn't say it.
Okay. And he was down there in that room, you roomed with Mr. Emerson, is that correct? Is that his name?
I'm trying to remember, Mandel, I'm not sure about his last name.
Yeah. But there was a person by the name of Mendel who was his roommate.
Yes,
Okay. And Mendel was there that morning, or excuse me, that evening as well. correct?
yes,
And when you had no reason to believe either one of them were leaving that particular evening at any time, is that correct?
to my belief.
Okay, of course, because Mr. Emerson would have had, assuming that's his name, Mendel, would have had the same curfew as Manny Ellis, correct?
Yes,
As well as anyone else in that house.
yes,
And so, when you went down there, the next morning, when you heard the phone call, I guess as you described it, between your wife and Mr. Ellis's sister, neither one of those people were downstairs when you checked on them, right?
no,
Meaning Mr. Ellis and Mendel.
no,
On your interview, well, strike that. You had indicated in one of your interviews that there was a dope house on 96th Street in the Ainsworth area, correct?
I was told that.
Okay. So that was information you got from who?
Relevance?
Overruled, you may answer.
From other tenants?
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it something you got from Mr. Ellis?
No, I didn't get that from Manny.
Did you get it from Mendel?
I'm gonna say I don't remember, but I do know that I could say it came from, I knew this from one of my wife's children.
And do you know where that drug house, or dope house was located on 96th and Ainsworth area?
Not that one. The one that I was referring to was on 102nd.
Well, I'm looking at do you recall being interviewed by the prosecutors in this room? Ms. East, Mr. Liu, and a person by the name of Investigative by Heitzman, approximately on May 28, 2021? No recollection?
I mean, if I interviewed it and during that moment in that time, we were probably trying to figure out, what was going on.
Sure, I'm sure that was true.
Yeah.
Do you recall during the course of the interview telling those individuals that there was a dope house in the area of 96th Street South and Ainsworth Avenue South?
96, but that's where,
Yeah, I'm just asking
Okay.
if you recall.
I don't recall saying that, but
Would you need to look at the transcript to refresh your recollection?
no,
Or I shouldn't say transcript, the report. Okay.
no,
Do not, so you don't deny making that.
no, if it's written down, I must have said it.
Okay, so, Mr. Ellis, Manny Ellis, he's present at 10:35 on on March 3rd, 2020. Correct?
Correct.
And Mendel is also present at 10:35.
Correct.
Did Mendel have a vehicle?
No.
Okay. Did he ever have a vehicle?
No.
Did they have the use of a vehicle at the house?
Mandel had a bike.
Okay. We're talking about a vehicle.
Okay, yeah, no.
By bike, is it a motorcycle or
No, like a
bicycle?
bicycle.
Thank you.
People call
Does that,
motorcycles.
I understand what
bikes.
you're, okay. So you had no motorized vehicle?
No.
And so, however, if you left with Mr. Ellis, you don't know how they got to the 7-Eleven, assuming that's where they went.
True.
Okay. Do you know if any other of the residents at the home would have taken them to the 7-Eleven, assuming that's where they went?
No.
Okay. And you don't know where they went. I mean, you've probably heard, but as far as personal knowledge, you don't know where they went, right?
No.
Okay. But one thing you do know is Mendel never came back to your residence.
No.
And did you hear from someone that he wasn't coming back?
Yes.
When did you hear that?
I don't know if it was a couple of days after that. I just remember when one of the ministers at our church, Tim Williams, said that he talked to Mandel. He was trying to get some money because he was working, I guess, part-time for him, and he wanted some money, and he said, tell Kim and said, I'm not coming back.
And you haven't seen him since?
No.
Now, you were just asked a bit ago about an interview that you did with the Detective Brockway, indicating March 12th of 2020. Remember that?
And again, we had so many people interviewing us, you know, so that's where if there's a mix-up or cloudiness, you know.
Well, let me, if I can try to refresh your recollection as to when that interview occurred and see if it does, you let me know, okay? And I'm gonna hand you make sure I have the right one here. Let me approach, Your Honor.
Proceed.
Excuse me a moment. I'll get this open.
Okay.
It's pretty bulky here, so. Oh, you guys pulled them out. Okay, hold on a second. I guess it was already pulled out, so forget about that binder.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
All right, all right, all right.
You see that transcript?
Yes, I do.
Exhibit
And that is exhibit number 825, Your Honor.
825,
Correct.
thank you.
Does that refresh your recollection as to when that interview occurred?
There's a date on here. I mean, Sheriff's Department. Now, was this and again, was it the man and the woman, or the one, you know, it was like, it was,
So if you look at that, I'll try to direct you, Mr. Armstrong.
Mhm.
If you look on that first page there.
mm-hmm,
If you see at the top there, that first paragraph,
mm-hmm,
and you see where it indicates there's a Detective Sergeant Brockway along with Detective Helmke.
it doesn't say a detective.
Look down that very first paragraph, the second line from the bottom of that paragraph.
Okay,
It's those two individuals.
mm-hmm,
So do you remember an interview, very first interview, I'm assuming, the very first interview where two detectives were present?
and again, if it was a male and a female,
Well, I believe these are two males. Okay. Well, in this interview, let me ask you this. When you were interviewed by whoever you were interviewed, do you recall having information about this case before that interview occurred?
Other than the fact that, you know, I was there as far as what had happened in the house.
Let me just be clear here. What I'm asking you, do you recall at the time of that interview whether you had seen video of what happened?
I cannot recall that. I know there was a video that was posted, but I don't know if it was during the time of this interview right here. And it could have been.
Okay, and do you recall when you got knowledge of that video?
You never did establish if there's a date on this report.
Oh, okay. Do you see the date on that report?
It says 3/12/2020
Okay.
at the top.
So, and this incident occurred on March 3rd, 2020, so just over a week later. Correct?
About 10 days, yeah.
Does that sound about
9
right
days.
to your recollection as to when that interview occurred?
And again, I cannot recall if that was that. We had a couple, but, you know, obviously it did happen. It's here.
Well, my question is, I mean, some people put the wrong dates on, not of any intent, but I just want to be sure the information that you gave him, assuming that date is correct, on March 12th, 2020, did the information contained there, and if it contained information regarding videos, do you recall seeing the videos and giving that information to the interviewing detectives?
If I gave any testimony or any videos, I was going off exactly what was happening in the moment. So
Okay.
if it was said that I did it, then I saw it and I said it, then there's no need not to.
Okay. All right. So, how much information did you have when Mr. Ellis's sister had called your wife?
None.
Okay. All right. So basically, all you knew from what you were overhearing on this conversation was he was deceased at that point. Is that fair to say?
And where it happened.
And what was your understanding as to where it happened?
On 96 and Ainsworth.
Okay. And nothing else?
Nothing else.
All right. So, and you hadn't received any phone videos at that time?
No,
Or had you?
no.
Okay. Now, so, you indicated you have, first of all, you have your own experience as a former substance abuse addict, is that
Yes, sir.
accurate?
Yes, sir.
And, but you were clean at this time, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And now you're into counseling and you're clean today.
Yes, sir.
You indicated drugs based on your experience. Are we talking about your personal experience or a combination of your personal experience and your counseling experience that drugs have a different impact on different people?
Personal and counseling, both.
And I assume with counseling you've had some training.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you ever see Mr. Ellis under the influence, to your knowledge, of methamphetamine?
I'm gonna say no.
Okay. If he was, you would be unaware of it.
Based on what he told me.
And
So he was there at Pierce County Alliance and he told me, you know, an incident where he was,
Okay.
and that's why he was there.
Okay.
And his behavior was, you know, a certain way. But I've never seen him, you know, personally.
And he said what he had told you is he had experienced, while he was under the influence this one time, he had a psychosis of some sort. Is that accurate?
In some restaurant or something, and somebody, they jumped over and,
That's right. And then, but that's the only time you're aware of, and that's just based on what he told you.
And again, I'm just going by,
I understand.
yeah,
Yeah. To your knowledge, you never actually witnessed how he acts when he's under the influence of a controlled substance. Fair to say?
fair to say?
And it was your understanding the controlled substance, his drug of choice was methamphetamine?
Yes.
And you said there was bad meth going on around that time,
It was in the USA Today
at that time?
at that time.
Okay. And was that in the Tacoma area?
Yes.
And do you recall when that USA article was? Oh,
Was at Pierce County Alliance, so it had to be, you know, because I remember I went there and I was like, look, everybody, it's bad stuff out there.
okay. And it was at the same time frame you met Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
Okay. And was it making people, I think you said it was having an effect in creating a psychosis in those people who were using it?
Yes,
Was it making them unpredictable
totally.
and something making them violent at times?
So, I had,
Is that part of your understanding?
yes, I had a,
I think that's all.
okay.
If someone wants to follow up, they can do that.
Okay,
So you have
all right.
unpredictability, psychosis, violent behavior.
Yes.
Anything else you remember about that article, the bad meth that was in Tacoma during that time frame?
No, sir.
Okay. One moment, Your Honor. I think that's all I have, sir. Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Evans? Go right ahead.
Armstrong, good afternoon. So you said Mr. Ellis lived with you for a little over 3 months, close to 4 months?
Something around there.
Okay, gotcha, and he was clean, he was taking UAs, correct?
Yes,
He was passing the UAs,
yes.
and you were testing for methamphetamine?
Well, it's a 10 panel testing for everything.
Okay, and based on the testimony, he was passing and doing well and appeared to be on the road to recovery, fair enough?
Yes.
Okay. And, at some point, you gave an interview, and this was on, I believe it was on March 12th of 2020, is that right? I think that's the one Mr. Ricky was asking you about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and so, in that interview, do you remember discussing that you had heard something or seen something where Mr. Ellis said he couldn't breathe, something along those lines?
Okay. So, yeah, that was a
You were aware
video.
of that?
I was
That
aware.
was something that had been either leaked to you or you'd seen on the internet at that point?
Yes.
Okay, and at some point, you or Ms. Mays said that whatever you heard had gone viral, is that fair to say?
I heard it was on CNN.
Okay, and so a lot of people, even on March 12th, that's about 9 days after this incident, people in the community were already talking about at least an aspect of this case, is that fair to say?
Yeah, they had a rally out in front of our house.
Okay, and you obviously help people with addiction, fair to say, right?
Yes, sir.
And you've been doing that here in the community for quite a while,
Yes, sir.
right? And do you work with the Tacoma Rescue Mission?
Helping clients get housing.
Okay, so you know people there at the Rescue Mission?
Not personally. I know Anna who helps with housing there.
Okay, all right. Do you know Sarah McDowell?
Not personally.
You haven't had contact with her?
No.
Okay, but it's fair to say that you know people that she knows, correct?
Probably,
In
if,
that
yes.
community?
Yes.
Okay. And the community feeling is that the police killed Mr. Ellis, right?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
When you were called by Monet, in this case, and you learned of Mr. Ellis's death, what she told you was that Mr. Ellis had been killed, correct?
What I heard on the phone is Manny's dead.
Okay, all right. But in your interview, do you remember saying that you were told that he'd been killed?
I think another church member had said that.
Okay, all right. But that kind of became the belief, correct? That this was a police encounter that had killed Mr. Ellis, correct?
Okay.
Sustained.
That's,
No.
Jury should disregard the answer.
In describing the 2019 incident that you first came in contact with Mr. Ellis.
Okay.
You mentioned that he told you that he had been charged with robbery in the second degree, correct?
No, he just said, oh, well, if that's what it was, he just said he got into a fight at some kind of restaurant and that he was high and they jumped over and 3 people jumped him.
Okay, so he said that the employees of the fast food restaurant had jumped over the counter and started beating him up with a bat. That's what he told you, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then he then went on to describe how he had been in an encounter with the police, correct?
Not after that.
And he described attacking the police and having to be tased,
In that incident?
correct?
No, I haven't heard that.
Okay, in a separate incident, did you describe getting in a situation where he encountered police and had to be tased?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I haven't heard that.
But you said that people exhibit certain behaviors when they take certain drugs, and those will be consistent, correct?
But you're talking about 2 different incidents, and one of them I don't even know about.
Okay.
So I can't actually,
All right, well, if he had been in an incident where he attacked police and had to be tased while,
Yes, Your Honor.
I
oh,
sustain the objection. This is wildly speculative now.
he did tell you in that incident in 2019 that he was in a meth-induced state of psychosis, correct?
he said he was high.
Okay. And Mr. Fricky asked you about the bad meth that was out there around that time.
I brought that to people's attention.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Judge, I maybe have 2 minutes.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Armstrong.
How you doing?
I don't want to go back through everything, but I just kind of want to summarize it up, make sure I'm understanding it correct. So, last time you had contact with Mr. Ellis was 10:35.
Yes, sir.
Nothing up until that point indicated to you that he had been using any type of substance.
Not at all.
Okay. His roommate is Mendel Everson.
Yes.
Everson, not Emerson, right?
Everson.
Okay.
Okay.
And last time you saw them, they were together in their room.
Yes.
Okay. And curfew's 10 p.m.
Yes.
and they never indicated to you that they were leaving or going anywhere. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And then after that night, you never saw Mr. Ellis again, correct?
No.
Okay. And you never saw Mr. Everson again either?
No.
Okay. In fact, Mendel never returned back to that house ever again, right?
No.
Okay. That's a yes, right?
Uh,
He never returned back to
oh.
the house ever again?
Yes, he never returned back to that house.
Okay, good. In fact, he said, sell all my stuff, right?
Oh, Mendel, yes.
Yeah, Mendel said, sell all my stuff.
Yes, he did.
Okay. And he said it takes about 12 to 15 minutes to walk to the 7-Eleven from your house, is that right?
I would think that, yes.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, sir.
Redirect.
Your Honor, I just have one question.
Sorry?
I just have one question.
Go right ahead.
Mr. Armstrong, you testified earlier that, actually it's 2 questions. You testified earlier that it wouldn't be against curfew if Mr. Ellis had let you know or asked to go to the store before he left, right?
Correct.
I think what's been marked as State's Exhibit 826, it's a summary of an interview that occurred on April 22nd, 2021. I believe Mr. Fricky referenced that with the Attorney General's office. And I'm going to ask you to take a look at
April what?
April 22nd of 2021.
Thank you.
And if you look at the second paragraph there, does that refresh your memory at all about if Mr. Ellis, when he came up at 10:35 hours,
Came
10:35 at night, but you know that he was was going to the store?
Ooh, that's what it says. Try not to get an objection here. Often Manny would walk to the store because of his the anxiety meds he was taking. So he would walk to the store, get some snacks, and by the time he comes back, he would be like chill. And that was more or less a daily routine.
Thank you. So asking you or letting you know that he's going to the store, it wouldn't be a violation then of the
No.
house rules? Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
But Mr. Armstrong, you don't recall that evening whether he asked you to go to the store?
I do not.
That's like,
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Nothing for the statement.
Okay. Mr. Armstrong, you're excused. Thank you very much. Okay. So we're at the end of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, please come back tomorrow, same time. Please don't discuss the case among yourselves with anyone else. Please avoid any communication with social media or any other kind of news report. Thank you. And you're excused, sir. Yeah, you can go.